You have reached Wrestling Let's Click Review. I'm your man, Steele, and today I'll be reviewing Masters of the Universe New Eternia Tri-Klops. Masterverse Masters of the Universe New Eternia Tri-Klops. But before I get to the actual review, I just want to go over some of the fantastic details on this packaging. Up front here, the typical display window showing you both the figure and all its accessories inside. Up in the corner it says 30 points of articulation. In the other corner you have a 6+, which is the age requirement for this figure, and next to that you have the Mattel logo. And below that, on top of the packaging, you have Masterverse. Down in front of this packaging, you have this beautiful illustration that kind of floats over to the side, starting with Tri-Klops. On the side of the packaging here, you have Skeletor, Beastman, and on the bottom here, you have a few generic ogres. And below all that, it says, Masters of the Universe, New Eternia. Then leading to the side of the packaging here, it says Tri-Klops. Then on the side of the packaging, you have a couple more cool profile illustrations of Tri-Klops. Then back of the packaging here, you have all his biggest features, and all his play features pictured here. Then down here again you have his profile picture, and next to that it says Tri-Klops, evil and sees everything. The Technomancer's latest technological masterpiece worked perfectly. Dubbed the Multi-Visor, Tri-Klops gazed into the paradimension and discovered a new Eternia, where the power of Grayskull was up for grabs. Then down here the cross of all the available figures in Masterverse Wave 12. Masterverse Masters of the Universe New Eternia Tri-Klops. Tri-Klops was released on March 15th, 2024 with the suggested retail price of $21.99, and it was available at all major retailers. Tri-Klops was released along with the other Masterverse Masters of the Universe Wave 12 figures, Battle Armor He-Man, Mechanic, and King Keldor. Tri-Klops has 30 points of articulation, and his accessories include 2 rotating and swappable visors, 2 swords, a crossbody belt, and 2 swappable hands. Tri-Klops stands 7 inches tall, and he is meant for fans ages 6 and up. Now that I have Tri-Klops on my display table, so I want to go over some of his play features and accessories. First by talking about his swappable visor. This swappable visor has some different detail than the default visor. It has kind of the angry eyes, not sure what that's supposed to be. It's got like kind of like techno detailing on the mold right here. And I know that the default one has the regular looking visor, but has the scale molding on it. In order to interchange the visors, it takes a little bit of working here. You gotta kind of push the silver part of the head through this ring and it clicks out of place. Pretty cool. And it's held on by a little tab around this ring, top of this ring right here. You have this little groove right here at the top of his head. And you see a lot of robotic detailing around the face. Very nicely done. It's one of those things where it kind of answers the mystery of what Tri-Klops was and what the heck that thing was on his head as a kid. You know, it kind of just turned around and it showed different emotions. In order to put the ring back or the visor back on his head, just put it around his head just like that and just click it right into place. It takes a little bit of finagling, but it clicks right into place just like that. It's a really cool feature, and just like the original figure, you can swap out that visor and it kind of clicks, the eyeball clicks into place. So if you swing it around, you feel it kind of click into place just like that. Very cool play feature. I really enjoy it. Tri-Klops is one of those figures that kind of eluded me as a kid, but it had such cool features that drew me into this character, and he was so hard to find in stores as a kid. Him and Trapjaw were 2 of the figures that I really sought after and never got my hands on as a kid. The next accessory I'm going to talk about is this. It's called a cross-shoulder belt in the instructions, or in a lot of the literature that I did for the research for this figure. But it's actually a bandolier. In order to arm this bandolier or this cross-shoulder belt on Tri-Klops, you need to kind of lift the arm up And this is one of the accessories you don't have to pull out his arms or his head to put it on. It fits kind of in a place because it's molded. It's molded to a specific position. You can't really rope it from this shoulder to that shoulder. You have to put it on that shoulder or it won't lay flat. So this is the only way you can really put this bandolier on Tri-Klops. Now back of this bandolier, you'll see a couple little slots right there and right there. And on the shoulder harness, you'll see a slot right there, and that's to hold his 2 belts, which I'm going to bring in right now. I'm going to bring in this first sword, because that was his default sword in the package, and it's kind of the same sword that comes with him when with the original Origin, the original release of Tri-Klops, and the Revelation release of Tri-Klops. The only difference between this sword and the one that came out with Revelation Tri-Klops is the hilt is orange, for some reason, because the original Tri-Klops, his sword was completely green, and they weren't able to put a lot into the accessories back then because, you know, technology's advanced so much in the last 40 years. Now they got this metallic paint detail, and they don't really have to vac seal these or do the chrome on the swords, because if you did chrome, it would take away from the flexibility of the sword, which is pretty cool. I'm glad they kind of, you know, went away from the chroming. You know, chroming's a nice effect, but I kind of like the dull luster of the sword. That's kind of cool too. It gives more of a realistic look. But in order to arm him with one of these swords, you have to kind of pry open the handle just a little bit. Because what happens is the hand does go in the back end of its default spot, but you want to slip the sword in before the hand closes up. And you do get a second sword. You get this sword right here. And I don't know the story behind the sword, because I know this sword's based on the original sword that came with the original Tri-Klops from the 80s. This sword must be in some sort of canon, maybe the TV series or a comic book. If any of you guys know, just leave a comment in the comments below and just kind of smarten us up on what this sword's all about. I mean, it's got kind of like an Egyptian detail to it. Pretty cool. It's got the eyeball in the middle here. In order to arm with that sword, I'm going to go ahead and open up this hand too. You can't just slip it in. Plus, I don't want to damage any of the paint detail on this sword, because these figures are excellent. And since, you know, I did not get into the classics, these are more the mainline version of the classics, just more at a affordable price point than the classics figures. The classics figures were more sold through the Mattel website or a lot of collector shops, and I've seen them retail for between $80 to $100. And the value skyrocketed for a little while there until they released the Masterverse figures, and they've come down a little bit because they know that people are kind of directing their attention towards the Masterverse figures, and rightfully so. These are fantastic figures. You know, when Revelation came out and they did a lot of the Revelation figures, I wasn't happy with it. I think if you watch a lot of my older reviews, I didn't like the way they molded the body. They kind of gave the chest more of a flat appearance, and the neck was skinny and jutting forward. And, you know, when they came out the 40th anniversary version of He-Man, they kind of gave me a little bit of hope. Then I heard about the new Eternia line that they were coming out with, and they remolded the bodies, gave the bodies more of a muscular, fuller look. And they carry that on with Tri-Klops. Tri-Klops is an excellent figure. Very happy with them, and I totally reserve my judgment towards the Masterverse storyline, because they have pumped out a lot of great figures, you know, since they kind of got away with Revelation. And even some of the Resolution figures look fantastic too. I mean, the Battle Armor He-Man, which I'll get into later on, he is a step above what they did with the Revelation He-Man. I mean, you could also take the armor off and you could actually have him displayed as the original He-Man, which something they should have done in the original Wave 1 figure anyways. So in order to store his 2 swords, you have those slots now. And what I do first is I take the default sword and I slide it in there, because that's the original Tri-Klops sword. You go and you take this other sword here, and you kind of cross the swords over, and you push the sword in a little bit. You cross over just like that, and now you have Tri-Klops with both his swords stored on his back. Pretty cool accessory, really cool. I mean, this figure's fantastic. I mean, he's great. I mean, I'm glad that Mattel did not give up on Masters of the Universe, because I want to have every single one of the original Masterverse figures kind of out there, because I mean, with what I've seen so far, starting with the 40th anniversary He-Man, then they came out with Beast-Man. I got my hands on this. I've seen pictures of Trapjaw. They look fantastic. I mean, I don't feel so bad about missing out on classics now that they have the Masterverse toy line out. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to change his fist now. In order to change the fist out, you just pull from the wrist, right there. You got a little porthole right there. And the end of the hand right there, you have a slotted peg right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring his 2 swappable fists. And as you can see, there's a lot of detail that's put into these fists. You got knuckle detail, you got like digit detail. You got back of the hand detail, knuckle detail, palm detail, fingernail detail. Just so nicely done. In order to put the new hand into Tri-Klops, you need to take the peg, put it right to the wrist, and you hear that little pop. And now you have Tri-Klops with his interchangeable hand. I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to go ahead and put his default hand back on. I'm going to move some of these accessories out of the way. I'm going to take the sword out, both swords out, take this cross-shoulder belt off, or bandolier if you want to call it that. And I'm going to take his other sword out of the way, because I want to arm him with his default sword. And of course, you got to pry the finger open, like I mentioned earlier on a little bit, so you don't like. And you can get the sword in without prying the finger in, but you risk damaging the paint deco on the hilt of the sword, which you don't want to do if you're a collector. And as you can see, my sword's a little bent because that's how it is stored in the package. But I want to go ahead and bring in my my Masterverse Revelation Tri-Klops. And up until this Tri-Klops came out, this is my default one, and I was kind of happy with it because, like I said, I do not like the body molds for the Revelation figures, and this one had that, where it kind of got that sloping chest. And one detail they did with this version of Tri-Klops, which I thought was pretty cool, is they added a bolt to his shoulder to kind of give him that robotic look. Because, I mean, back in the 80s, we did not know who he was. We just knew he had this little thing on his head that spun around, which was pretty cool. And this was my definitive Tri-Klops until this one came out. I mean, I don't have a Classics version to do a side-by-side comparison with this figure, but I'm just saying that has to be a close, or even like maybe a better definitive figure than that figure. I mean, Classics did really bust out some great figures, but with Revelation here, I thought this was good. But I mean, between the two details, and let me bring in my Classics, because I don't have an original Tri-Klops. Like I said, that figure kind of eluded me as a kid. But I mean, you got the very basic look to the original Tri-Klops. You have the green sword. And with technology back then, I mean, this was a lot to have the black painted here. I mean, you didn't get that a lot back in the 80s. And to paint the sword silver would have been just way out of the stratosphere, because they already have paint detail on this shoulder harness, and paint details. There's only so much they can do, for a figure, and at the cost that it was back then. I mean, these figures were less than $5 back in the 80s. But I mean, like, you look at the sword that came out for both Masterverse figures. They have that metallic silver paint, which is really nice, and they did give this figure the orange hilt. So the sword, with the silver paint that went over the sword, is a little bit brighter. Here it has that dull luster to it, and that's because some of that dull green bleeds to that paint, and it doesn't affect the paint. I mean, the paint scheme a little bit. If you shine it to the light, you can see like a certain lustering of the light off the sword. And here you don't really get that. And I mean, this figure has a little bit of paint, scuffing right there, which I'm a little bit upset about, but I mean, it happens. I got that right there too. But that's a nice figure. And the cool thing is, with Revelation, they did maintain the color scheme. They tried to make it look a little bit more realistic with the orange part of Tri-Klops' wristband and belt and his shoulder harness or his chest harness right here. They kind of went with a copper-looking detail, like a metallic detail, and it kind of matches. I mean, that's paint right there, that's molded detail, and that's some molded detail. I mean, you can only match it so much, and you got a little bit of it right here. They added a little bit of, paint and mold detail to the shoulder harness, which I think is really, really cool. If all these figures fall over, I mean, the risk of all the points of articulation and 3 figures, I mean, they're bound to knock each other over. But as you can see for the 3 different generations, though, I mean, you get the basic look for the original figure, and they did some scaling detail for the visor here, some bolt detail, pretty cool. But they maintained sort of the paint scheme. You got the green. Just have like a darker green here, and with the orange detail, they went with the copper, and a little bit more mold detail. But with this generation, they went all out, man. They totally went gold, the gold detail with the wristband, or the wrist bracelets and the shoulder harness. I don't know why they went green with the belt. There might be a story behind that. I'm kind of glad they went with the gray stripes around the black belt. That kind of adds a lot of great detail to it. But it's a nicely done figure. Now, I mean, I don't have to go over the points of articulation because I already mentioned many times 30 points of articulation. And this figure's solid. And I'm glad, at first I was not happy with the Revelation figures. And I'm kind of glad when Masterverse went away from Revelation, they went with a different body mold, because With Man-at-Arms and He-Man, I noticed that, like I said, I had that sloping chest and that jutting skinny neck, and it just didn't look proportionally right, especially if you took all the armor off. If you wanted He-Man to be displayed without all his swag, he looked kind of odd, and he kind of it looked really weird. But when they remolded him for the 40th anniversary version of He-Man, they gave him more of a fuller body, and the chest harness was a little bit larger, so it fit around his body a little bit better, and that's the body type that they're going to go with moving forward, because I noticed with this wave of figures, they have a Battle Armor He-Man that comes with that same body mold, and you can also take that chest armor off and put on the original harness, and you have the original He-Man too. So it's kind of a 2-in-1 deal, which I'm very, very happy with, because I'm glad they're able to do a redo with that version of He-Man. But if you guys found any of the information in this review valuable, please like and share this video. Also, if you really enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel, and while you're there, click the bell to be notified of any future videos. I want to thank you guys for watching Steele's Awesome Toy Collector Review. I'll check you guys out next time.